Okay, hello again, everybody. This is Chris Wells of the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. It is now 7:03. We do typically give everyone a couple extra minutes to get on, as I announced a couple of minutes ago. But in respect of everybody's time, we also want to go ahead and get started with the meeting. I'm joined tonight by Claudia Lana of VDOT. Her and I will be sharing the presentation. And Supervisor Rodney Lusk of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Before we begin, let me begin by, I lost my script, so I'm going to do it from memory. This WebEx virtual meeting is being recorded, and so you would be able to get this meeting from our webpage, and we'll put it out on social media. The way to ask questions in this meeting tonight is by using the Q&A function. And please use the Q&A questions to all. And do not use the chat. By using the Q&A feature to all, that allows all the panelists to see the questions and respond. We will be doing the presentation half VDOT and then half Fairfax County DOT. And we'll take the questions at the end. Also at the end, there'll be instructions if you're calling in tonight on your cell phone on how to, quote, raise your hand on your cell phone and ask questions from your cell phone. So with that, Supervisor Lusk, I'll hand it to you if you'd like to just say a welcome greeting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris and Claudia, for being here this evening. I appreciate the opportunity for the residents here in Lee to hear what is being proposed with regard to the paving schedule and cycle for 2021. I know that VDOT's working very aggressively to think through some of the opportunities for our next year's program as well. So just want to acknowledge, appreciate the partnership and recognize the importance of the work that's going to be done here. So thank you very much for being a part of this discussion, and certainly feel free if you have questions that you'd like to ask to do that as well later in the program.
Thank you, Supervisor Lusk. So again, my name is Chris Wells. I'm Fairfax County's Department of Transportation. Claudia Lana is Virginia Department of Transportation. I'll just give you a brief setting of the stage of what this is and what we're doing. So every year VDOT does repaving in the summer as part of their annual maintenance. And for over 10 years now, the county and VDOT have had a partnership to look at the striping on the roads and see if there's improvements that can be done. The basic premise is you have a blank canvas. The road's paved, it's all asphalt, and you can either put the stripes down where they were, or you could put the stripes down differently to improve things in the community. 10 years ago, this was originally only focused on our bicycle network, building bicycle lanes as part of this effort. But we've really evolved this effort to look at other benefits to the community. We know that communities are, not everyone's a bicyclist, so communities are concerned about speeding issues, cut-through issues. And by the restriping gives the a visual trick, so to speak, of narrowing of the roadway. So it helps with those things, and parking can be better organized. And then, of course, we also address pedestrian safety. So with that, I'll go ahead and Lindsay Marford is my staff from Fairfax County also. She's running the show. She will hand it off now to Claudia, and then she will also read us the questions at the Q&A at the end of both of our presentations. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to all. And I'm loading my presentation, but I wanted to thank you for coming here tonight. I want to thank Supervisor Lusk very much for being here tonight with us and for providing this opportunity for us to speak with you. Again, my name is Claudia Lana, and I'm with VDOT. I will be talking to you about our VDOT paving program, and here's a slide with the agenda. Very briefly, I'll start with the program and budget for the Northern Virginia region. Then I'll move to the state plan, talk about how we select roads for paving. It's a very data-driven process, and I'll be sharing some information about how we inspect and rate the pavement and its condition to help us make decisions every year about which roads to include in the next year's program. I will be referring to the different types of paving treatments that we can use depending on the road condition. And pavement dashboard is basically telling you how the different road systems, interstates, primaries, and secondaries have performed over the years. And I will be making brief reference to the markings and striping that Chris referenced earlier. And then I will be showing you links to helpful information. The Vita Nova paving program includes maintenance for 14,000 lane miles in Northern Virginia. Particularly in Fairfax County, there's over 7,000 lane miles, or more than half of the Northern Virginia district. This means these are the roads that we maintain in terms of repaving, but also in terms of drainage and patching potholes and keeping signs in place, trimming vegetation to make sure that sight distances are not obscured. So this gives you a sense, I hope, of the size of the program. In this slide, I'm presenting the budgets for the district for Northern Virginia in $1 million. As you can see, and it goes from fiscal year 2013 all the way through the current year, or 2021. As you can see, the budget started relatively low, 58.1 million back in 2013. This year's budget went up to $108 million. That's not the highest that we have seen over this period of time, but it is a substantial amount of funds. As you can see, in the interstate program is where we put the majority of the funds. As you can imagine, because traffic is highest and speeds are highest, we want to make sure that those roads are maintained in the best condition. Also including primary roads, we have allocated almost $18 million this year. And for the secondary roads, which are the most abundant in our system, almost $77 million. So over that period, 2013 through 2021, we have allocated over $1 billion. Now, how do we plan and construct these paving program? Every year, we start in the spring and summer, gathering data for the next calendar year. So we are already planning, as Supervisor Lusk mentioned, for the next year, for 2022. In the summer is when all these plans for the different road segments are put together into packages or groups of roads that can be put out to the contracting community for bids. We send the packages to central office, and in the winter, they put the contracts out. They are advertised for bids. Bids are received and evaluated, and contracts are executed. So when the weather turns better, such as right now, no more freezing, is when the actual repaving begins. And typically it goes from March through October, sometimes November. Actual paving normally begins in April. Before that period is when we have our pre-construction meetings and review the bids and finish the contracts. So how do we select roads for paving each year? Those selections are based on several factors. One of the most important ones is the condition of the pavement. And I'll show you in the next slide what those different conditions can look like. Another one is the traffic volumes. Of course, as you can imagine, the roads with the highest volume, such as interstates and primaries, get a little more attention. Another thing that we keep in mind is if there is a big utility project planned, we avoid having paving in that area to avoid tearing down the pavement when the utility project comes along. We also try to group contracts into neighborhoods so that we eliminate contractor driving around, and we prefer that he spends his time actually paving. So that includes economies of scale, minimize mobilization costs. Another factor that we incorporate is feedback from our maintenance crews. Our crews are out there every day doing their usual maintenance work that I mentioned earlier, looking at drainage systems and patching potholes, and they're the most familiar with the conditions of the road that they see. We have several area headquarters throughout the district, and each one specializes in a geographical area. They become very familiar with their area, and their input is very important to us. Okay, so how do we collect the data? Every year we have a contract that has the contractor has very specialized equipment. It's GPS enabled, and it has cameras underneath to the sides and the front, and they're able to detect information about the pavement condition, including whether there is rutting, whether there is pavement distress, and all of this information is gathered digitally and sent to our paving experts that pore over this data. As I mentioned, at this time of the year, we're already planning for next year. They're already beginning to see what the data collection is showing. Okay, based on this data that comes from the field, and our scientists look at rating the condition of the pavement. We use something called the Critical Condition Index. This system was developed by the Army Corps of Engineers many years ago, and we find that it works very well, and we have adopted it. The Critical Condition Index varies between 0 and 100, with 100 being excellent condition. As you can see in this slide, we provided a color coding, which is something that helps us identify, as we map these conditions, the areas where the roads are in excellent, good, or fair condition. Colored here as green to light green into yellow, or roads that have a critical condition index below 60, which are the ones that we target for repaving and fixing, because their condition is poor, very poor, or below. On the right, you can see some pictures of what those conditions look like. Excellent paving condition between 90 and 100, looks nice and smooth. Poor condition, which is below 60, you can see some distress on the paving. And a very poor condition, you see potholes and rutting and a lot of problems that drivers can notice as they're moving around on these roads. So how frequently do we collect this data? For interstate roadways like 66 and 95, we do this annually. Similarly, for primary roads like Route 1 and those with numbers below 600, we also collect those annually. Secondary roads are the most abundant, and we do about 20% of them each year. Secondary roads include small subdivision roads, roads that you drive in every day, route numbers of 600 and above are considered secondary roads. Since we can only inspect about 20% each year, it takes us about 5 years to come to a road to cover all of the roads, all of the secondary roads. Now, beginning this year, we're treating the high volume secondary roads such as Braddock Road that have average annual daily traffic of 3,500 or above. We're treating them as if they were primary roads and inspecting them annually. This slide shows the performance goals that we seek for the different road systems, interstate, primary, or secondary. For the high traffic volume roads with ADTs above 3,500, we look for sufficiency ratings or CCIs above 60 for 82% of the roads. For those roads that have lower traffic volumes, less than 3,500, we vary. For primary roads, our goal is 75%, and for secondary roads, it is 60%. That is percent of the network with CCI of 60 or better. This slide is what I call the dashboard, which basically tracks the performance of the different road systems over the years. The color codes that we're using is interstates are in red, and you can see that between 2012 and 2013, they improved quite a bit and have continued to increase up to 2018. They have dropped slightly in the last 2 years, but their percentage of interstates that are at our goal of 82%, we're still meeting that goal. In fact, we are just above that at 83% sufficiency rating in 2020. For the primary roads, it has gone up and down a bit, but as of this year, every time we have been meeting our performance goal above 82%. This year, we are 83%. Secondary roads, on the other hand, we started off doing very poorly. Back in 2014, the percent sufficient road was only 30%. As you can see in this graph, that has improved over time. And by 2020, we are almost at our 60% sufficiency rating. In this slide, I include several different types of pavement treatment that are applied to the roads. Preventive maintenance is applied when the road is not as bad condition. It extends the life of the road. We apply something like slurry seals. We also do some patching, which is more than filling potholes because it's not with cold mix, but with hot mix, and repairing all around the area that needs the patching. We also do corrective maintenance where we use plant mix and mill and overlay less than 2 inches, apply surface mix asphalt after it has been milled. For roads that need a little bit more care, restorative maintenance, we mill a little deeper, 2 to 4 inches, and then overlay with intermediate mix asphalt, 2 inches. And above that, we apply about just under 2 inches of surface mix asphalt. Full depth reclamation, or FDR, is used in roads that are in very poor condition. This is essentially reconstruction. It's very rare, and sometimes we combine it with another project. For example, the Rolling Road project, we're widening, and as part of the project, we have included doing a full depth reclamation of that pavement and then widening. That's basically excavating everything that's there, existing pavement, go down 6 to 8 inches of stabilization, and then apply 2 to 4 inches of intermediate and surface mix asphalt. Okay, this slide shows a snip of pavement condition map. It's not the most recent, but it helps illustrate how we track and map the condition of the different roads. You can see on the right the legend where roads in blue are those that are in excellent condition. In green, good. Yellow is used for roads that are in fair condition. And then those in purple and red are in poor and very poor condition, respectively. So in this view, you can see that there are roads in all of these different conditions. Those that do not have a color coding is because they're private roads, or for example, in this case, over to the left of the view is Town of Herndon. They maintain their own roads, so we don't track their pavement condition. This map shows the paving status map. Basically, it shows the map of the roads that are going to be paved in that particular year. I will tell you that the 2021 statewide paving status map has already come out, and I will go to it briefly in a minute, but let me first explain the color coding that is typically used. The ones that are in the schedule are in red. Those that are in progress or are getting paid at the moment are shown in green, and this is updated very frequently once the paving season begins, such as now. And those roads that have been completed are shown in blue. One thing that you can do if your road is in the paving map for that particular calendar year, or if you're interested in who's doing the work, you can zoom into the particular road segment. And when you do that, a window will open that will give you the name of the project manager, his phone number and email, so that you would be able to contact that project manager if you desire information about a particular road segment. After I show you the next slide, I will go to the current 2021 statewide paving map. But before I do that, I also wanted to mention that on this right column of this paving map, there's a little bit more explanation about the different treatment types that we apply. Okay, Chris mentioned how pavement markings vary depending on the road. We have a blank canvas, and we can either return the pavement markings the way they were before paving or in kind. Occasionally, we include some minor adjustments, such as move the crosswalk a little bit or use high visibility in particular locations after analysis. We may add edge lines. Occasionally, we go a little bit beyond that and do things such as lengthen a turn lane or create a new turn lane. Those projects have to be thought of ahead of time because they involve adding not just milling and overlaying, but possibly making sure that the paving handles the new traffic, so it may need full depth paving, not simply mill and overlay. VDOT coordinates with Fairfax County DOT, and you will hear more about this. We collaborate very closely. As soon as we have a draft paving map, we start the coordination so that Chris and his staff can evaluate some of the different treatments that he will be talking about and that he has briefly mentioned earlier, such as road diets or bike lanes or improve site crosswalks, etc. Or new crosswalks sometimes. Okay, in this slide, I'm showing some of the resources that are available to you, not just on paving, but on different things that you may have a request or an inquiry from VDOT. If you want to report a road problem or a maintenance request, including things such as a sign that has been knocked over, or bushes or vegetation that has grown and is covering a sight distance, or there's a pothole, you can call 1-800-4ROAD, which is 1-800-367-7623. This is a customer service number that is always manned, 24-hour customer service. You will get a ticket number so that you can track it. You can also go to online at MyVDOT, which is https://my.vdot.virginia.gov, and again, enter your need there, report a problem, or even sometimes make comments if you wish. Now, the maps that I mentioned earlier, both the pavement condition map and the paving map, which now the 2021 paving map is available, can be found online at virginiaroads.org. You can search web maps and you will find those two maps. There's a lot more information here, including information on crash data and speed limits and different things. If you're inclined to collect data, you can search for it here. Now, I'm going to go briefly to the current statewide paving map. Here's a view. I hope you can all see it on your screen. And I mentioned earlier that you could zone in and get very close to a road that you may be interested in. This one is Telegraph Road. I just happened to pick this one. It tells you who the project manager is, Dinesh Sinj, and it gives you his phone number and email information. So that would be one way to track if your road is in the paving program, whether it is has been completed or if it's going to be is still in progress. What to expect if your road is in the paving program is the contractor will put out signs on the side of the road, or even sometimes door hangers, letting you know when you need to move your vehicles out of the way so that paving can happen. And that is the first sign that that paving is about to happening in your neighborhood. Now, with that, I'll turn it over to Chris to continue on the presentation. And thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. I will now share my presentation. Okay, there we go. Looks like I'm on. Okay. Again, my name is Chris Wells. I'm in the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. I'm the Active Transportation Program Manager. Active transportation is the current industry jargon for pedestrian and bicycle and other rolling human-propelled transportation, such as wheelchairs or scooters. Oh, my PowerPoint didn't go forward. Let's try that again. There we go. I'll talk tonight about the proposed striping modifications for the Lee District in 2021. Go over exactly, even before that, what it is I'm talking about, and then we'll take your questions at the end. So as I said earlier, we've had this relationship with VDOT over 10 years now, where we look at the draft paving information in the fall, and we're basically trying to identify roads that are wide, roads that are excessively wide, and have the opportunity to have bike lanes striped, or in some cases a 4-lane road that doesn't need the traffic capacity of a 4-lane road. It could be a 2-lane road for bike lanes, and again for traffic, improving traffic behavior. The reason we do this is because the county has an economic development goal of creating bikeable and walkable areas of economic development. And to be able to get to those areas of economic development on your bike, you need to be able to bike throughout the county. So since this has been going on for many years, we've really had a lot of success in this program. We've picked up a couple hundred miles of bike lanes throughout the county, and the network is really starting to come together with our off-road trails and our on-road bike lanes. The most interesting thing and the best thing about this process that we're talking about tonight is how cost effective it is. When we build trails or when we build sidewalks, they are very expensive. It's essentially the same as widening the road. We have to come into a retrofit construction environment, widen out 10 feet, 14 feet on one side of the road, make it level to pull a trail or a sidewalk in. And those costs were expensive 20 years ago when we started doing this, and they're even more expensive today. So typically our sidewalk and trails projects are costing, millions of dollars if they're, half a mile long or a mile long. This process here that we're talking about tonight is very cost effective. The road is going to get paved. VDOT has a budget for adding striping back. And if we add additional striping by adding bike lanes or something, yes, there's a cost, but these costs are in the range of tens of thousands per project, 100,000 per project, maybe a few 100,000 countywide. But again, our ability to make community improvements, both for bicycling and again for excessive speeding and things like that, for a few $100,000 is much. It's literally the most efficient thing that I'm involved with in trying to improve things in the county. Why are we doing this? As I said, we want people to be able to bicycle. But what we've also done in America and here in our county is we've really, in the past few years, the best practices in bicycling have changed rapidly. Since the 1970s, the main focus for bicycling in America has been on-road bike lanes on high-speed, high-volume roads, which only serve that strong and fearless, or maybe some of that enthusiastic and confident group that you see on the pie chart there. We've also typically, for those decades, focused on commuters. We're shifting that now because that has not worked in America. In all these decades of doing that, we really haven't encouraged a lot of regular people, common people, to ride their bike because no one feels comfortable on a 45 mile an hour road or a 50 mile an hour road with cars whizzing past them. So we're moving. We've always built a trail network in this county, and we've always had off-road trails. And the on-road bicycle facilities we're talking about tonight are on lower speed, lower volume roads, and they're they are the comfortable type. But what we're trying to get to is that big part of the pie that you see there, the interested but concerned. We know that there's an untapped demand for bicycling in this county, and it's based on the need for safety and comfort. Because if you don't feel safe or comfortable riding your bike, you're not going to do it. You're going to choose to drive, or you're just not going to make that trip. The other aspect of this is, like I said, we've previously focused on commuters. It's a large county. It's a 400 square mile county, and not everybody's going to bike 25 or 30 miles to their job. But what people are interested in doing, what people can do easily, is that short bicycle trip to their local activity center, a grocery store, to their places of worship, to their schools, to their parks. So we know that there's a huge untapped demand for bicycling in this county that we're trying to serve by these more comfortable facilities. So what is it that I'm talking about? Excuse me. In the middle there, you see the standard bike lane. That's a 5-foot bike lane. And that's what we've traditionally done. But we're trying to move to what you see on the right, if we have room, to create a buffered bike lane. And that, again, increases the comfort. And that buffer is that strip next to the cyclist that you see there that creates a space between the passing vehicle and the bicyclist. Then there are, of course, situations where we don't have room for either a bike lane or a buffered bike lane. And so the marking you see on the left there is a shared lane marking, or a sharo. And we use those where we have a bike lane, say, for a few blocks, but then the road narrows and there's not room in that block for the bike lane. So we use that sharo to indicate that this is part of a bike route, part of a bike lane network. So it has two purposes, so that drivers should be aware that bicyclists will be on this section of road. We also can place it in the lane where it's actually indicating to the bicyclist where the best place for them to be. So if the lane is wide enough, it might be placed to the right, because there's enough room on the right for the cyclist and a car to pass on the left. But if the lane's narrow, we place it in the middle of the lane, and that's to indicate to the cyclist that the safest thing for them to do for that block is to take the lane. So I mentioned the benefits of bike lanes for cyclists, and this infographic that we created, it goes beyond the cyclist aspect to talk about the other community benefits. So the top left is of course the increase in comfort for people cycling. The top middle is pedestrian safety improvement. So when we narrow the roadway with the striping and pull the vehicles into the middle of the roadway more, the exposure risk to pedestrians crossing is reduced, because those vehicles are in less of a space of that roadway, whether they're crossing at a crosswalk or just crossing mid-block or crossing from house to house. So there's a pedestrian safety benefit. The top right graphic is indicating, if you're just walking along a sidewalk, that the bike lane next to you, or the buffered bike lane next to you, again, pushes that vehicle a few feet away from you. So it's much more comfortable and quiet for you to be walking along a sidewalk and not have a vehicle whizzing past you. The lower left graphic gets to the reduced speeding and the reduced noise levels because cars are going slower, again, when this perception of a narrow roadway affects driver behavior. And then the lower right issue, and I'm not sure if we have any roads that have single family driveway frontage tonight, but there certainly are plenty throughout the Lee district. It actually improves your sight distance pulling out of your driveway, because again, the vehicles are moved more to the middle of the road. So as you're looking out of your driveway to see if vehicles are coming, the sight distance triangle that us engineers use is improved around things such as a parked vehicle like that, because again, the vehicle's in the middle of the road more so than traveling along the side of the road. So this two photographs here show a before and after of Annandale Road, which we did a few years ago. On the left, you have the original lanes that are excessively wide. You know, certainly if we can add a 5-foot bike lane and still have a travel lane, that means that the lane was 16, 17 feet wide. A standard vehicle lane is 11 feet wide. So the fact that we can add bike lanes to a 2-lane road such as this it just tells you that the lanes were too wide. And why does that matter? When lanes are wide, drivers don't have to pay as much attention. They don't have the need to control themselves, and so there's an ability to not pay as much attention. But psychologically, it makes them feel that they can go faster because there's nothing in their way. So on the right, what you see is a good indication of the different types of treatments that are done as part of the striping. The lanes have been narrowed to standard 11-foot lanes. The bike lanes have been added. The parallel parking has been designated. So the 90-degree on the right there shows where the parallel parking is, and then where it ends, approaching an intersection. On the left, there's a radius coming out of the side street that again shows how the better way to drive and into the roadway. And then when we have a right turn movement into a bike lane, we use those dashed lines there, which we call puppy tracks, and that's to indicate you're supposed to just merge into that bike lane and slow down and make that right turn. It's just a white stripe. Of course, not if a bicyclist is there, but that's the type of treatments we're talking about. So here we are in Lee District tonight for 2021. Over the years, we've done different roads throughout the county, and again, it's all dependent on what's being paved. There's actually a few roads this year in Lee District, again, to build off of what we've already done. We have C Trend Way, Fleet Drive, Grovedale Drive, Sir Viceroy Drive, and King Center Drive. So the first one is Fleet. It's from Yadkin Court to Beulah Street. It's essentially today 3 travel lanes with a center turn lane. It has a sidewalk on both sides for some of it, not along the railroad tracks, but on-street parking on one side and no on-street bike facilities. The after proposal would be something like you see in this graphic here. We'd have 2 travel lanes, bike lanes, and then a left turn lane or a center turn lane would be better engineered than is on Fleet today. And then we will maintain the legal on-street parking. We know that parking is critically important, both from a capacity point of view and also from an equity point of view. So we're very sensitive to maintaining parking. And so we're often asked, will all the parking be maintained? We do need to say that it's legal parking because when we add the striping like this, we're not going to stripe parking next to a fire hydrant or to a transit bus stop. So if a street's totally parked today, the honest answer is yes, there would probably be a couple spaces lost. But again, it's a much more organized and a much better outcome for the community. The next street is Grovedale Drive between Beulah Street and Franconia Road. The current conditions are 2 travel lanes with a sidewalk on the west side and a partial sidewalk on the east side and wide shoulders. The proposal would simply be to restripe those 2 travel lanes with bike lanes. And then there's a wider section where we would have a left turn lane. King Center Drive in the Kingstown area between Kingstown Village Parkway and South Van Dorn Street. It's a 4-lane divided roadway with median and sidewalks on both sides and no bike facilities. The proposal would be to really convert that to a 2-lane road. This is a road that does not have the traffic volumes that needs to be supported by a 4-lane cross section. So we would use that outside travel lane and convert that to a buffered bike lane. And so this is a picture actually of South Lakes. The one thing we learned on South Lakes is that we want to make sure that it's clear that that's not a travel lane. So we'd actually, the engineering now would be to make the travel lane just slightly wider, the buffer slightly narrower, and the bike lane slightly wider so that it's clear that it's just one travel lane for vehicles. C Trend Way from Franconia Road to the end of the road. It's currently 2 travel lanes with sidewalks on both sides and no bike facilities. The proposal would be to add a center line, bike lanes and parking lanes. And again, all the legal on-street parking would be maintained for C Trend. Sir Viceroy Drive, which is also in the Kingstown area, from King Center Drive to Kingstown Boulevard. It's a 4-lane undivided roadway with 4 travel lanes and a sidewalk on the east side and no bike facilities. The proposal for Sir Viceroy would be to convert that to a 2 travel lane road with a center turn lane, as you see in the picture, and then bike lanes in each direction. Again, the low traffic volumes that exist on Sir Viceroy are well below the threshold of needing to be a 4-lane road, and so the road will function perfectly well as a 2-lane road and much safer and for cars and drivers. Last, but certainly not least, is pedestrian safety. So, as part of what we do in this process, our staff reviews the proposed paving list to see are there locations that don't have crosswalks, that have significant pedestrian generators, such as a school or a park or something like that. We also work with VDOT to improve the crosswalk markings. In a very small group of cases, we might also want to add something like you see in this photograph here, which is a pedestrian median refuge. Technically, we don't have a budget to do this, but as we talked about the striping and the opportunities to do things with the restriping, we know that if we wanted to add a pedestrian refuge like this and the road's going to be paved and we could do the striping, we'd want it to match up. And so there is a cost savings if we were to propose a median refuge to get the striping done right with the paving. So we typically in the past few years have done a handful of these each summer, 1, 2, 3, or 4, say. So one of the main purposes of tonight's meeting is to get community input. And so if you're aware of a crosswalk that really could benefit from a median refuge, or if there's a location where there's not a crosswalk and you'd like a crosswalk, that's another part of the community input we'd like to have from you tonight. So speaking of community input, these 2 slides go to where to reach us beyond the Q&A tonight. So for VDOT, if you have paving questions, they have a very excellent customer service portal, and it's the my.vdot.virginia.gov or their 1-800-4ROAD phone number. To reach us, this link will be live when it's on our webpage, but you can click on that word electronically and submit stuff to us. But the best way to, or the other way to reach us is by finding us on our website. I'm not going to read that webpage. Just go to the Fairfax County website and type in the search box 2021 paving, and that'll take you to our paving page in the Lee district. You can email us directly at activefairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov. Or you could mail us comments to our office at the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. So with that, we'll move into the Q&A portion of the evening. If you're on your computer, again, use the WebEx Q&A feature to type in a question. If you're on your cell phone, you press *3 to raise your hand and your question will be asked. So with that, I will hand it off to Lindsay to ask us the questions. Thank you.
Hello, and thanks, Chris. We only have a couple of questions so far. So the first one, I think, is a question for Claudia. What areas in the district are the county and VDOT looking to repave next year, and how can residents suggest roads for next year?
Okay, thank you for that question. The areas that are going to be repaved next year are decided by VDOT based, as I mentioned, on those factors such as the condition of the road and its volume, and that there are no large projects, etc., planned for that particular area. Like I said, we are planning for next year. You can suggest roads by entering them in the fields that in the pages that my.vdot.virginia.gov has different levels of issues or questions that you can enter. So that's one place where you could enter your requests. Again, we do take them and list them. The decision will be made on the factors that I presented earlier today, but I appreciate that if you have specific suggestion, you enter it there. And it may be that you need repairs before a full repaving is done, then that would be the same place where you can enter that information. You can also call 1-800-4ROAD for that information. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Claudia. And question number 2, I think this is probably for Chris. Is a sidewalk being put in on Telegraph Road between Harbor Spray Park and Huntley Meadows Parking Area 3? And if you need a reference point, I have the capital projects map up.
So we we are constructing a sidewalk on Telegraph heading up to the Lee District Park, but the Huntley Meadows parking lot that I think you're referring has a sidewalk. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, then the answer would be no, because I'm not aware of a sidewalk project there. We did, when the Board of Supervisors did the Transportation Priorities Plan in 2014, we identified Telegraph as a corridor to complete the sidewalk network, but our intention was to complete it on one side, the entirety of Telegraph Road from Route 1 up to the Beltway. So we had multiple small missing links along Telegraph, mainly along the east side from South Kings up to Huntington. So that was the focus of what we've done. There is still one of those missing where the Pike branch goes under Telegraph, and we're still working on the feasibility of what the best way to cross that is. But unfortunately, what that means is that was only focused on one side of Telegraph. So we did not at the time have the resources, nor do we now, to add a sidewalk on both sides of Telegraph. So I'm not familiar with the link that you're particularly asking, but if there is something on the other side of Telegraph, right now, that's the only option that's available.
Okay, thanks, Chris. We don't have any other questions right this moment. So maybe give people a couple of minutes since there's a lot to think about. And nobody has called in on the phone, so we don't have any. Well, we do have a hand raise. Okay. All right. To the attendee with your hand raised, I'm going to unmute you. You should hear a WebEx voice telling you that you've been unmuted. And then please ask your question.
I submitted a question in the Q&A. The question is, on the slide, on the Sir Viceroy Street slide, you mentioned a center turn lane, and the markings there don't look at all familiar to me. If you could pull that slide back up. Yeah, the markings there do not look at all familiar for left turn, center lane. I mean, excuse me, center turn lane. Yeah, I see the dashes on there, but again, it doesn't look familiar. Is that compliance with Federal Highway Administration? I assume they have some kind of manual on that.
That's a very good catch on your part, sir. No, there should be opposing arrows in each direction that shows the fact that it's a dual direction center turn lane. So the way that that's done is every few hundred feet or so, there's back to back. I can't draw it with my fingers very good. Left turn arrows. And then if there is a proper intersection, we actually would go ahead and design a proper left turn lane to that proper intersection. But when you have random offset driveways and not a defined intersection, this concept of the center turn lane allows people to make those turns. But yes, there should be two opposing left turn arrows in each direction, spaced throughout that.
The diagonal sign on the right-hand side looks like it's adjacent to a bike lane horizontal marking. That type sign is unfamiliar to me too. That's normally around a bridge abutment.
Yeah, that sign we call an object marker, and so it is to indicate some form of hazard. whether it's a ditch or, as you said, a bridge abutment or something else that you don't want to hit. It's intended to be a nighttime reflective signage, in particular for marking hazardous objects.
The sort of guardrail markings adjacent to that sign, that's the abnormal part to me. If I saw those today, I would have no idea what they indicated.
Yeah, actually, at the end of a guardrail, you're correct. There's a larger version of that with that same pattern that marks the fact that the crash attenuator at the end of a guardrail is also not something to hit unless you're crashing.
I'm talking about the yellow marks that are about 10 or 12 feet long in the center turn lane.
Yeah, oh, that, I'm sorry. So the picture's a little distorted there. It's intended to be like a solid yellow. Those are dashed yellow markings, and you might be correct. The proper marking might be to do double yellows with that. I don't think I have a different picture, but this is Evergreen. This is Evergreen Lane in Annandale. So this is just a screenshot trying to show what the bike lanes in a center turn lane looks like. But as I've talked earlier about this improved evolving relationship that we have with VDOT, one of the things that's improved is all of these striping plans are now properly engineered by a consultant. So the finished product today is significantly better than 10 years ago, because all of this engineering is put down in a design plan by a professional engineer and then approved by VDOT. So the markings will be the current approved MUTCD markings.
What kind of markings? I didn't get the letters. M something.
I'm sorry, MUTCD. That's the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's the federal Bible of, so to speak, of all signs and marked pavement markings in the United States.
So I take it from what you're just saying that both VDOT and FCDOT then are straight compliance with that manual.
Yes, sir.
There's no
Absolutely.
local exceptions. Okay.
No, VDOT is very conservative and sticks with the MUTCD exactly.
Sorry,
Thank you
yes.
very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. And thank you, Kenneth, for that question. You prompted me to close and reopen my window, and WebEx now tells me there's a lot of questions. So let's get back to the list. Okay, the next one's also for Chris, asking if there's a possibility of getting plastic flex posts to enhance the bike lanes.
Yeah, and first, before I go on that missing sidewalk link of Telegraph earlier, we will add that to our request list. We maintain a request list of citizen requests for sidewalks when future funding is available. So we will go ahead and make sure that we add that to the list. Flexi posts or other type of vertical indications are something that are used elsewhere in the United States for, in particular, in buffered bike lane situation. You could put them in the buffer. We don't typically see them in the United States in a picture like you see here, when there's just a bike stripe. However, we do not use those here in Northern Virginia. VDOT has a concern with the maintenance, a legitimate concern with the maintenance between our snow plowing and the way traffic is around here. We don't have the budget to install and maintain those. And as with any of these markings, and if we did those, there's an expectation of maintenance. So it's by providing these type of facilities, that's the positive, but there's also standing behind them, so to speak. So as it is, VDOT is on the hook for maintaining this additional striping that we proposed. But the flexi posts are not used throughout the bike lane network. They're only used in unique situations where there's some sort of strange conflict point or something. So they're used. I can only think of maybe 10 places in the entire county that they're used. So it's possible in the future, though, when we have a buffered bike lane, if the situation would change, that either the county or the state could install and maintain those. So every time we pick up a buffered bike lane, that is certainly something that if in the future we determine that it's something we want to do, I'm sure VDOT would let us do that if we agreed to pay and maintain them. And we as a county don't have a budget for that right now either. But that's a good question. And unfortunately, right now, the answer is no, we do not do that.
Thanks, Chris. The next few questions, I think, are for Claudia. The first one, I think, is just a paving versus striping question. Will the streets like C. Trindway be repaved first before they are restriped?
Yes, I see that C. Trendway is one of those that are going to be in the list for 2021 repaving. And yes, that will be done first. And then the striping will be put in place based on those engineering plans that Chris mentioned, if we're doing anything different than what was there before.
Thanks. The next question is, will South Van Dorn be repaved? There's a comment that it needs protected bike lanes to provide a connection between Telegraph and Franconia.
So I'm looking at the list of paving roads, and I don't see South Van Dorn in this list for this year. So will it be paved in the future? That decision will be based on the factors that I mentioned, its condition, and what other roads in the neighborhood are going to need repaving. At that time, if that road is included in the draft plan for, say, next year or some future year, at that time, we would share the information with Chris and his team for their consideration about adding a bike lane. So I think that would be possibly considered in the future.
Okay, thanks, Claudia.
Yeah, and let me just add to that answer. What we look at is the traffic volume. So even though we built that road as a county, as a 4-lane road, if the traffic volumes don't support the need for it to be a 4-lane road, that's the proposals you see here tonight on based on that. The engineering threshold for it needing to be a 4-lane road is 20,000 vehicles a day. We're a little bit more conservative. If the road is carrying anywhere between 12 and 15,000 vehicles a day, we're probably not going to propose it for a road diet. But if it is carrying less than that, and I'm not familiar with South Van Dorn, I am familiar with it. I don't know what the traffic volumes are. It's quite possible that it is carrying less than that volume. So as Claudia said, in a future year, when it's repaved, we will absolutely take a look at that and see if that's a possibility. But unfortunately, if it is carrying a higher volume of traffic, then we really do need to maintain that capacity.
Thanks. Okay, so another question for Claudia. Beulah Road between Franconia Road and Telegraph Road was repaved in the last couple of years, yet there are already holes being patched this spring. What is done to correct poor construction and save money on repairs in the future?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And okay, if there are holes that are found, potholes that need to be repaired, they're being repaired. I am taking this comment to our paving folks who can review which was the contractor and the situation for their information and consideration in the future. Having said that, we had a winter of a lot of freezing and thawing, and that has caused more than our share of potholes. We are in the part of the country where our winter temperatures hover around 32 degrees. And this particular winter, we didn't have as much snow as others. We did have a lot of freeze-thaw cycles. So that may be the reason here. It may not be. Either way, I'm taking your comment back to our paving folks for their information and to see if they can take a look at this particular segment and what is happening. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. This next one is probably for Chris. The comment is Hayfield and Manchester should have 4 crosswalks, as now there are only 3. So in that case, Manchester is the main line and it has 1 crosswalk across it.
Sure, that's a great comment question. So the evolution of pedestrian safety in this county over 20 years has been catch up. So when the board created the pedestrian program in 2002, we were backwards looking. We were looking at where are our top pedestrian crash locations, and for years we were retrofitting intersections with signalized intersections that had traffic signals already, but either they didn't have signalized crosswalks, or the crosswalks that they had did not have the pedestrian heads for them. So we as a county retrofitted at least 100 intersections where we added signalized crosswalks. VDOT, as part of when they do signal replacement maintenance, I've also added signalized crosswalks. The issue in this case is that the focus on protecting the most vulnerable road users hasn't always been there in our highway design in America. For, again, since the car was invented up through recent years, the focus has been on the vehicle, not on pedestrians. And of course, part of that is also because there weren't, we're a suburb, and until our suburb filled in with 1.2 million residents today, there weren't a lot of pedestrians. So that type of infrastructure wasn't always included with every single project that was built. Fast forward to where we are today, we are pushing for crosswalks on all 4 legs of an intersection, or in that case, it's a three-legged intersection, so on all 3 legs of an intersection. And that's actually something that is not a part of our comprehensive plan or our policy. We're actually doing an update to our comprehensive plan right now called the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan. And part of that is a systematic safety element that will make that type of recommendation that then will be endorsed by the Board of Supervisors, so that it is clear to developers and to us and to VDOT that we want to see crosswalks on all the legs of intersections. So VDOT is working with us today on all the major highway projects or roadway projects that we have in the county. Projects that were scoped and designed a couple of years ago may not have had this concept in them, and so we're making projects change. The Route 28 project is going to construction right now, and right now we actually made them go back and change their design to add crosswalks on all 4 legs. So This is an issue that has evolved as the emphasis has really changed in our county to protect the most vulnerable road users by making them a priority over the vehicles. And of course, signalized crosswalks add delay. The more signalized crosswalks that we have, it's going to delay traffic. But we're making that conscious decision now to do that. At that particular intersection, we don't have a project to add that crosswalk. Once again, we can add that to our unfunded list, but that's a significant engineering project. That's if it's uncomplicated, and it's the kind of thing we could get VDOT to be our contractor for, so to speak. If the county had money and VDOT would install that for us, that's still $150,000 engineering project to add a crosswalk to a traffic signal. You have to do the curb ramps, you have to do the signal equipment, you may have to move the stop bar back, which is all the loop detectors for the vehicles. If it's more complicated than that, if we need right of way, then you're talking $250,000 just to add a crosswalk. So that may sound crazy, but that's the reality. And so that's the explanation as to why 10 years ago, when that section of roadway was built, that was not a priority for the designers, but today it is. And we'll certainly add that to our list of project requests to consider in the future. That's still, like the program we're talking about here tonight, that's still a very cost-effective safety improvement, even though that sounds like a lot of money. Again, it's much less than the $5 million or so that it costs to build something bigger. So our history of adding signalized crosswalks throughout the county is actually one of the things I'm most proud of the Board of Supervisors for funding and supporting, because it's really a critical safety element. We want people to cross at signals. We don't want them to cross busy roads mid-block if there's a signal nearby. So we absolutely then want that signal to have signalized crosswalks for them to use.
Thanks, Chris. All right, we have a couple of shout outs in support of Fleet Drive and the proposed restriping there. And then a question for Claudia. You mentioned that signs will be posted 3 days in advance. What will be done if cars have not moved out of the way?
Thank you for that question. The signs will be placed ahead of the paving. Each contractor is responsible for putting those signs. It may be 3 days, it may be farther than that in advance. And if the paving is about to start and there are cars still there, they will be towed. And in order to be able to complete the paving, the milling and overlaying, they are given several days to do that. And of course, if it gets towed, there is a place where they can pick it up quickly. As I mentioned when I presented the paving map, you can see who the VDOT project manager is responsible for the particular road that may be being repaved. That project manager is also overseeing the contractor. There have been cases where the contractor put signs for, get your car out of the way in the next 2 weeks. And we have gone back and asked him not to do that, but rather to break it up into smaller segments so it doesn't inconvenience the property, the homeowners or the residents. However, obviously the work needs to be done and they're given notice, and if they're not moved, then they do get towed.
And Claudia, if you don't mind, I'll add, because your predecessor, Allison, and I did this presentation for years. Allison used to say that, every effort is certainly made to not tow them.
Absolutely.
They'll go to the door, they'll knock at people, they'll try and find out who the vehicle is. And then if it's towed, what she used to say was that they're typically just towed around the corner. they're towed, they're not impounded
Right,
or anything like that. They're just towed out of the area of paving.
Right.
So it's,
Thank you, Chris. That's a good addition. Yes.
Okay, thank you. There's a few questions about the repaving and striping of Telegraph Road, so I'm going to try and combine those all together. So there's a comment that says, please consider narrowing the lanes using the shoulder lines on the portion of Telegraph Road being repaved in order to provide more shoulder space for those who might be biking and walking, where there isn't a sidewalk or trail on both sides. There's also a question asking if Telegraph Road will be striped for 2 lanes like it is currently, or 3 lanes. And will any sections contain bike lanes?
okay, I'm unmuted, video on. No, there's no proposal for bike lanes on Telegraph. And this is a similar question. We had a similar question in the Mount Vernon district about Fort Hunt Road. What we focus more on the roads that are wide, that have the ability to add facilities. So when there's not enough width to add facilities, we haven't done the deep dive, so to speak, on that. But that's a very good question. Telegraph is similar to Fort Hunt, and so we can take a look at what opportunities there might be. We need to maintain 11-foot travel lanes, and we certainly don't consider a 1-foot shoulder a bicycle facility. So in our initial review, we did not see the opportunity for bike facilities, but I'm sure Claudia will take back to the VDOT paving and striping people this question, and we can take a look at what the striping is there. It's quite possible they've already engineered some improvements in the striping, because again, the technique, the approach we're using these days is modernizing the engineering of the striping that's in many cases been out there 10 or 20 years.
Thanks, Chris. Next, we
And
have a comment.
before you go to the next question, yes, I am taking this comment back to the group that did the paving marking plan about the possibility of changing the lane width in order to accommodate a little bit of shoulder. However, as Chris said, it wouldn't be a bike lane per se, but rather a wider shoulder.
Thank you. Next, we have a comment that Barclay Drive at King Center Drive needs crosswalks. Chris, do you want to take that, or should I?
Why don't you take that, Lindsay? You're helping me with the crosswalks. I'm not familiar with that side street.
Okay. So King Center Drive and Barclay is definitely on our list of proposed crosswalks. We look at the repaving list and the map and identify potential crosswalk locations each year. And then we have to put together a study and submit it to VDOT, because you can't just put a crosswalk. It has to meet a bunch of different criteria. So King Center Drive was actually on the repaving list last year, and we had started the study last year. So we're going to wrap it up this year and submit that. So the answer is we are trying. But the studies, they look at things like, is there actual pedestrian demand? Are people trying to cross the street there? what is the vehicle volume, what's the roadway configuration, and is there proper sight distance? Can you actually see a pedestrian who's trying to cross? How fast are vehicles going, or what's the speed limit? Are there curb ramps available? That sort of thing. But yes, we are studying and submitting that one this year. This next one's for Chris. What is the status of finding an alternative to the trails removed from Huntley Meadows Park? This might actually be for the Park Authority, but I'm going to guess you know the most here.
Sorry, muting video. So that's part of the active Fairfax Transportation Plan update that I mentioned earlier. As part of that, that effort is intended to update our countywide trails plan and our bicycle master plan, both of which had trail designations that were not necessarily the same. So we're combining that into one forward-looking document. Both policy document and one map of the county. Because of the concern of the Huntley Meadows trails, we did, back before the pandemic, when we could have in-person meetings, had a couple of charrettes with the communities down there that were actually very productive in folks coming up and showing us potential alternatives for consideration. So that will move forward as part of the active Fairfax Transportation Plan. We're currently in phase 1 of the active Fairfax Transportation Plan. So that's more the data gathering, the more community input phase. Once we move into phase 2 of the plan, then that's when we will propose any new trails to be added to the plan. So that's for those who are not familiar with it, it's a very difficult subject because Huntley Meadows is literally the jewel of our Fairfax County Park System, and our Fairfax County Park System is nationally recognized as a gold medal winning park system in the United States, and Huntley Meadows is literally the jewel of that system. It's a unique ecosystem that is extremely sensitive, and so try as we might from the transportation perspective to come up with engineering solutions that could go through the park. The risk of the environmental damage has been continuously raised as sort of a non-starter with the Park Authority, and understandably so. It is again in a very dense and growing jurisdiction such as Fairfax County. It is quite a unique place. So we need to balance that issue with the fact that there not only is there need to get east, west, north, south around the park, but there's also needs for the communities that border the park to be able to access the park, and there's equity issues associated with that. So it's very complicated, but it'll be addressed as we move forward with the active Fairfax Transportation Plan. So as of today, there is no update. It'll move forward as part once we conclude the community engagement phase that'll be going on this spring and summer. That will guide us countywide, and in the case of Huntley Meadows, to making any recommendations that are possible.
Thanks, Chris. I think this next one is also for you. This is a how-to question. There are patches along Highland Avenue in Springfield which don't have any sidewalks. What can be done to rectify the situation? Case in point, from June Street to Atlantique, and another area from Flora to the other side of Springfield Swim Club.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I've been there in the past. So the challenges in our county is it's a very diverse county geographically, land use, and of course population wise. The Board of Supervisors has funded $536 million for sidewalks and trails and bus stops in our county over more than 20 fiscal years. So that's a huge number, and it's more than any of the other regional jurisdictions have been able to commit to funding pedestrian bike improvements. However, it's still not enough to solve all of our problems. We have many neighborhoods such as that were built before we required sidewalks. Most of the infrastructure we get in the county is through the development process. So, 90%, 95% of the infrastructure throughout the entire county was obtained through the development process. So today, if that neighborhood was built, the developer would build that sidewalk as part of that development. So the need to go back into neighborhoods that were built before the 70s that didn't always have complete sidewalk networks is great, as you can imagine, mainly in the inner jurisdictions, the Mason District, Lee District, as we're here tonight, or in the neighborhood there in Springfield. So in the Transportation Priorities Plan in 2014, we actually made a commitment to neighborhood sidewalk links like that. Previous to that, we were still trying to fix missing infrastructure on major roadways such as Route 1 and Route 7 and Columbia Pike. So we have, arterials that don't have sidewalks either. And so most of our focus before 2014 had been exclusively on fixing those problems that we had. In the 2014 Transportation Priorities Plan, we consciously made an effort to build neighborhood sidewalks because the criticism was, well, you're never going to get into the neighborhood. So we had some, 100, 200 sidewalk projects in neighborhoods. That the section of Highland by the swimming pool was certainly one of the ones we had to consider at the time, but ultimately there was not enough funding, and there were other priorities that was not able to be funded. So I know that we have that section at the swimming pool on our unfunded list. We can make sure we add the other one that I'm not familiar with to the unfunded list. And the challenge moving forward is just being able to find enough funding. The other challenges, though, are the impacts to properties, and I always need to make sure people understand that we need to balance. I don't know if we need to balance, but we do balance the impacts to people's properties. So often we're faced with someone coming to us with a good idea. Hey, there ought to be a sidewalk along here. But those are people's front yards, and those are the people live there. It's their houses, and so what we really need for communities to be successful to move forward is community support, and in particular, community support from those affected properties that we need to build a sidewalk along. And our process compensates people for right of way and for damages. So it's not that we would build a sidewalk and not take care of people, but those property owners need to be partners with us. So if that's your community, if you're involved in that community, we've often just suggested that folks, informally, whether you have an HOA or just informally talk to your neighbors to say, hey, one of the things that the county would need to get us to build a sidewalk here is your support. And it's not legally binding, or if you have 10 properties and one person doesn't support it, that's probably a hurdle we could overcome. But if you have 10 properties and 9 people say, no way, you're not touching my front yard, then that's a problem that we really probably won't be able to overcome. So appreciate the input. We'll make sure we have the other section of Highland there on our list so that we're aware of it.
Thanks, Chris. All right. I don't see any more questions. I have learned my lesson and I refreshed the window to make sure. We do have a hand still raised from Kenneth. I don't know if it's a leftover from before, but I'm going to unmute you. And if you do have another question, please go ahead. If not, you can press *3 again to put your hand down.
My mistake, I forgot to put it down. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, I don't think there's anything else then, Chris.
Sure. Well, at this point, I want to take, I should have probably said this earlier, but in case anyone left the meeting already, but we really do want to thank you all for your involvement. Again, it's a county of 1.2 million people. In the Lee district, that means there's well over 100,000 people, and there's definitely not 100,000 people on this meeting tonight. So we appreciate everybody's involvement. This is what we do for a living professionally. But we work countywide, and we really benefit from your community knowledge and input, criticism or not. We definitely need to know what you know as residents living here and being there, all year long, 24 hours a day. So I certainly want to thank everybody tonight. Thank everybody for your involvement. Claudia, Supervisor Lusk, if you have anything else you'd like to say. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
I think I would also like to thank everyone for your time and attention and coming here tonight, and Supervisor Lusk for the opportunity. Thank you.
I'll just echo the same remarks. Really appreciate your thoughtful questions and suggestions. I think this is really what the public process is all about. And as Chris said, we're going to learn from these conversations. So please continue to share any future thoughts or questions that you have. And again, thank you for participating this evening.
Thank you. Good night. Have a good night.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.